Texas Democrats are all abuzz about the potential for Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett to run for U.S. Senate, which is the marquee race in Texas next year. If she enters the race, it will provide a real jolt to the Democratic primary and perhaps the general election. In a poll October 1st by the University of Houston and Texas Southern University, Crockett topped a hypothetical Democratic primary matchup with 31%. State Representative James Tallarico, who is already in the race, and former Congressman Beto O'Rourke, who is not running, tied for second place with 25%, and former Congressman and Senate candidate Colin Allred had 13%. 6% were unsure. And when it came to a potential general election race, all three Republican candidates, incumbent Senator John Cornyn, Congressman Wesley Hunt, and Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, came out on top of Crockett. We spoke with SMU political science professor Matthew Wilson about the impact a Crockett run will have on the Democratic primary and on the general election.
Well, all polling suggests she would be very competitive in the Democratic primary, that she would be a major contender for the Democratic nomination. And she certainly has a devoted following, not only in Texas, but nationally. So I think she would be able to raise a decent amount of money to make a bid for that nomination. Certainly, I think Colin Allred, James Tallarico would prefer to see her not get into the race. That's something that, they would have to reckon with her as a formidable contender. But of course, the calculus for her is not really about winning the Democratic primary. It's if she were to win the Democratic nomination, how credible would her chances be in the general election? And that's perhaps a different story.
She said she would only get into a race if the polling shows that she could expand the electorate and that she could win a general election based on that expanded electorate. So what do you think? I mean, do you think that she has the ability to expand the electorate and win a general?
Well, Democrats in Texas have been talking about expanding the electorate for cycle after cycle after cycle. What that used to mean was getting Hispanic voters to show up at the polls. However, Hispanic voters in Texas have actually been trending more Republican in recent cycles. So that put a dent in that whole strategy. Now, whether that will continue in 2026, we'll see. But what Congresswoman Crockett must mean by that is that she believes she can reach out to disengaged younger voters, perhaps a larger share of the African American electorate, to grow the base of the Democratic Party. And with what we've seen with somewhat a lackluster Republican turnout in some of the recent races, it is possible that the electorate in 2026 in Texas will look more Democratic than it typically does. And if Congresswoman Crockett thinks that that's going to be the case, she may feel like she has a plausible enough chance to throw her hat in the ring.
She said that she's not talking about bringing Republicans over to the Democratic side. Mm-hmm. She said she would need people to attract people who have not voted and bring them into the fold.
That's right. That would have to be the strategy, because if you're looking for crossover appeal or someone who really clicks with independent or moderate voters, Crockett would not be the way to go. That's not going to be her strategy. That is, either Tallarico or Allred would presumably have more appeal to the center of the electorate. Crockett's strategy would be different. Hers would be a fire up the base strategy, and coupling that with trying to bring to the polls people who in the past have not participated. Now, that's always a hard way to go.
Again, the filing deadline for the candidates in Texas is December 8th, 1 week from tomorrow, and we will be watching. The Democratic primary for Texas governor is expanding. Former Houston Congressman Chris Bell recently joined the race and will square off against entrepreneur Andrew White of Houston, who ran in 2018, and State Representative Gina Hinojosa of Austin. I went one-on-one with Bell and asked him why he's running again. 20 years ago, he became the Democratic nominee for governor when he challenged Rick Perry.
I'm running because I feel like Texas is headed in the wrong direction and has been for some time, and I've paid very close attention to the last legislative session. Education has always probably been the #1 issue for me, and improving public schools. And I've also have spent a lot of time studying choice. within the school system. And I'm a big backer of public choice, meaning being able to move your child from a non-performing school to a higher performing school within the public school district. But trying to get kids out of public school and move them over to private school, I think, is a step in the wrong direction, and I think it will continue moving in that direction. It worries me greatly that some of the people backing that have said publicly that they would like to see Texas become a theocracy at some point. And I really think that Greg Abbott has worn out his welcome.
Why do you think you are the best Democrat in this race?
First and foremost, I think Democrats should elect someone in the primary that can beat Greg Abbott, and I think I'm that individual.
Why?
My political makeup, I'm moderate, center-left, socially progressive, fiscally conservative, and I think that's exactly the type of candidate that the people of Texas are looking for. I think there are a lot of disaffected Republicans right now, certainly a lot of independents, that want an alternative that they'll feel comfortable with. And I think that's been the big mistake of the Democratic Party in recent years, not really offering those disaffected Republicans and independents a better place to turn. The Democratic Party just kept going further and further left, and at a time when I felt like they should moderate.
What are your top priorities if you are elected?
Education, corruption, affordability, but along with affordability, livability and opportunity. It bothers me greatly that we have the 8th largest economy in the world, state of Texas, not just in the country, but in the entire world. And to have a state that rich and be the most financially distressed state in the entire country, in a lot of ways, is unforgivable.
And talk to me about what you mean by that.
Well, it means the number of personal and commercial bankruptcies. It means the number of uninsured. Of course, we have more uninsured individuals than any other state. And to a certain degree, Texas is becoming sort of a battle between the haves and have-nots. And Texans have always been about lifting other people up and providing opportunity. And I think a lot of that can be accomplished through the education system and some other initiatives I'll be introducing during the campaign. But I think we are going to have to address those concerns and create a better life for those who are really struggling.
You talked about your opposition to the school choice, the model that was passed by the Texas legislature, taxpayer-funded savings accounts for students to go to private school. If you are a governor, would you seek to undo that?
I would certainly try, but I'm also quite aware that I will most likely be dealing with a Republican legislature. And another reason I think people should take a very strong look at my candidacy, I've always demonstrated an ability to work with the other side. So you pick your battles, obviously. But on the education front, I also think I'll be putting some ideas forth that we can all agree on.
The future of DART remains up in the air. This week, a 5th city in North Texas, Addison, will consider whether to hold an election this spring, allowing voters to decide whether to withdraw from the transit agency. Plano, Farmers Branch, Highland Park, and Irving have already placed the issue on the ballot in the spring. The cities have said they're not getting the amount of service from DART that they have paid for through their 1-cent sales taxes. We spoke with 2 state lawmakers about this issue, Republican Matt Shaheen of Prosper and Democrat Mihaela Plisa of Dallas. Both of their districts include parts of Plano. We'll start with Plisa.
I am a little concerned, especially after the TxDOT report that just came out that said that Texas is way too car-centric. And with the massive amount of people that are moving to our state daily, that we need to work on our public transit systems. Look, I'm also concerned because withdrawal isn't theoretical. It triggers an immediate shutdown of all DART services. GoLink, federally required paratransit at 12:01 a.m. the exact next day. So unless cities like Plano, Addison, and all these other cities that want to leave the DART system have a fully funded ready to go, federally compliant transit system ready on day one, it's going to leave a lot of people without any options.
Have you had any conversations with any of the cities, well, particularly Plano, because that's in your district, since all of this has come to the fore?
I wasn't against Plano leaving DART. What I am against is the city of Plano not having a federally compliant system ready to go the next day. My community has a lot of people that rely on paratransit. I have one of the largest IDD communities in North Texas in my district, and they rely on public transit. I also have multiple university campuses in my district. Those students need to get to class. Those people need to get to work. We have seniors that rely on these things. So I'm not against Plano leaving DART, but I am against us not having a mobility transit system in one of the fastest growing cities in the state.
The city of Plano offered a new proposal to DART, which DART is now looking at. What do you think of that latest plan?
I want to say that I absolutely agree that Plano should negotiate for maximum value for every taxpayer dollar that produces real mobility. So I am in favor of Plano and all these cities getting top dollar for what they're putting in for their taxpayers. Less money essentially will mean less services. And so Plano will be responsible for building, like we said, its own paratransit services. And that's one of the most expensive federally required services. So that's my top concern.
This is a reflection on the failure of DART. We've been trying for 6 years to work with DART to come up with some kind of a financial accommodation that works with Plano, but some of these other cities that are putting way more money in that they're receiving in services, and DART's refused to work with us. So this is totally on DART. DART has failed the region, and so we'll see how these elections go, but I think DART may very well be gone in a couple years.
But doesn't that concern you in the sense that here is this, 40-year-old agency that really runs a good chunk of the transportation in our region?
Well, I'm concerned about the commuters and the people that rely on transit to get to work, get home, go shopping, and the like. I'm very concerned about them.
If, in fact, there is still going to be election, let's say they can't work it out, are you urging Plano to have a plan B in place so that voters can see what the alternative is?
Oh, absolutely. I've talked to the mayor, I've talked to other city council, I've talked to their staff, and they are very much looking at alternatives. Plano is very much focused on the individuals that rely on DART, both the people that live in Plano and people that live outside of Plano but come into Plano to work. They're very focused on that. And again, one of the things that they're looking at is an Uber alternative, which would be way less expensive and a much greater service for those individuals that need that type of transportation.
Let's take a look at Plano's latest offer. What do you think of that idea?
Well, Plano is being more generous than maybe I would be, but look, at the end of the day, Plano's looking at the numbers, Irving's looking at the numbers, and I have full faith and confidence in the city of Plano and their leadership to come up with an arrangement that will work for the individuals that are reliant on transit. But in my opinion, they're being very generous with DART right now.
So you would give less. You'd want more back, in other words.
If I was running the show, I would just hold that election and leave this totally up to the citizens of Plano. I would tell them that there's probably an opportunity for property tax relief if this passes, and I would tell them that there's going to be a much better service for the individuals that today have to ride on DART. They have to go to a station, wait however long, and then take the DART to another station and then figure out how to get to their end destination, where now they can use Uber. Uber picks them up in 5-10 minutes and they go to the door where they need to ultimately be. It's a better service for the individuals that today rely on DART, and it's much less expensive for the city of Plano.
In a statement, a DART spokesperson says they are aware of the upcoming Addison Town Council vote. The agency says, quote, DART remains committed to negotiating transparently and in good faith to ensure North Texans have access to transit solutions that work best for them.